Today we're going to talk about oregano and why it's such a valuable addition to your vegetable garden, as well as a beautiful addition to your edible landscape. Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Kylene, and right now we are redesigning our front landscape to make it so that it can be kind of a food forest or more of an edible landscape. And one of the things that we have decided to include is oregano. It's really high in vitamin A, C, K, iron, calcium, and manganese. So oregano, super easy to grow. It's very drought tolerant and it's beautiful in the landscape. So while we plant it, I'm going to use it, it's a kind of a really tall ground cover, but as oregano grows, it will kind of spread. Right now is the perfect time for us to harvest it. And so I've harvested all of this because we're going to show you how I transplant, because one of the things about me is I'm frugal. And I'm not going to go to the nursery and buy a plant if I can help it and use those funds someplace else. Now, don't get me wrong, I spend a lot of money on plants at a nursery, but you can totally start oregano from seed, and it just takes a while for it to be established. But what I have in our garden is these big, gorgeous oregano plants that have actually grown way too large for my kitchen garden. And so we went in, and I'll show you how we chopped down the top of the oregano so that it would be able to transplant. And now we're gonna go and we're gonna transplant it and make it into this beautiful border plant. But right now it's green. If I would have left this another 3 or 4 weeks, it would have had these gorgeous flowers on it. And it's actually a very visually stimulating plant. It's just beautiful. It also attracts insects, good insects, into your garden that pollinate and that kill the bad insects and keep that balance there. Another thing, and one of the reasons why I'm planting it right here in the front, is because strong herbs like oregano and mints will help to repel rodents. So by planting those by your doorways or places you don't want rodents to be, you can actually help to discourage them from entering your home. And who wants rodents, right? Especially where we live in the country. So that's kind of a strategic thing, but it's delicious. As a culinary herb, it's amazing, but even more as a medicinal herb, eating oregano is fantastic. It is an antiviral, antibacterial, all kinds of amazing properties when it comes to oregano. And so it's a fantastic thing to have in your garden for that reason too. Enough about that. Oh, one of the things I wanted to show you. This is like my latest favorite book. It's called The Herbal Kitchen by Cammie McBride. And I heard her speak recently and I just had to get her book. And it's fun because she goes through a bunch of herbs and tries to help us learn how to incorporate them more into our daily diet by doing different things, just adding more to our foods, but by making infused vinegars and oils and things like that. So right here, these I'm going to dry, and we'll just hang them upside down in a dry place in the shade. But this, I just pull these off the stems, and with this later today, after I finish all of my transplanting, I'm gonna experiment and I'm gonna make some vinegars and oils using these to help add more nutrients to our daily cooking and make it taste better. So all of that being said, oregano is fabulous. Really consider it for your garden. Let me show you how I'm going to take one plant and make it into multiple plants and put it in my front yard landscape. Now before we transplant the oregano, we're going to need to cut it down. Now if you look, this is the perfect time to harvest because this oregano hasn't blossomed yet, but it's close. When you smell it, it's amazing. And so in order for it to transplant well, we're going to need to take off all of this upper growth, which is perfect because we're just going to harvest it and preserve it. And if you wait for it to go to flower, then the leaves are going to be just a little bit bitter. And so the optimal flavor is absolutely right now. Now, when I first planted this little guy, it was not this huge. It was just this little tiny start that I had started. I think this one was from seed. It was a little tiny, and it's taking over way more of my vegetable garden than I want it to. So it's a really good thing that I can transplant this, give a few to my friends, and it'll be beautiful, gorgeous in the food forest or the edible landscape in the front. because of its just size and beauty, and it takes a little bit of water. It's perfect. So now this poor little guy is gonna get a serious haircut. All right, so now I've cut the top of this, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a shovel and do the best I can to kind of just tease this out. The roots are really embedded, right? It makes it so that it's more of a survival plant. So I was able to get this whole oregano plant out, and you can see it's huge. It started out as this little tiny thing. It's one of the things that makes it great for a survival garden is that it's incredibly resilient. When we look at this, we're gonna need to cut these roots apart. I could transplant this whole thing in one piece. I could cut it into 3 pieces, or I could actually break it into just small little clumps and transplant it. So now let's put it in the front yard. Realistically, all you need to start the plant is just a little cluster like this, right? And I would cut this down even further just to make sure that the energy goes to the roots. But I want this to take off sooner. I want the plants to be big faster. So I'm going to use larger clumps because I have a lot of oregano to use. Okay, I want to make sure that the hole is large enough to accommodate these roots. It's great, looks good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of, this is called manna from Rocky Mountain Bioag, and I found that it really helps my new plants give them a good start. And then these are just worm castings, and I just want this first time, because I'm never going to plant this again, right, unless I transplant them, so I just want to give them a really good start. Now, this little guy, we're just going to set him in here, but this top is still too large. It's too tall for me to be comfortable with. So I'm just going to clip it, but I put these clippings in the hole because the same nutrients that that plant took out of the ground, these will compost and put back in there. So I'm totally happy doing that. Now I'm going to come back and I'll water him, right? I'll water her really, really well. Okay, in this one, I don't know if you can see this. This little root goes out here. I'm going to go ahead and just tuck that in there so that it can start its little runner process. And when I come back, I'll water it really well. And I've got a few other things to plant. And then I'm going to put a really thick layer of wood chips. Check this out. These little guys are all watered in now and happy. I recognize that they look a little bit sad, right? They've had kind of a rough day, but I promise they're gonna bounce back and be gorgeous. And I can't finish by putting the bark around them like I would because I'm not done planting yet. And that's my last step, is the drippy and the wood chips. Growing oregano in with your landscape is just one way to just plant some plants that you can eat. Oregano, we already established, it has a really high nutritional and medicinal value. It can keep you healthy just by eating it. And you're more apt to do that when you've got it growing in your own yard and we know where it comes from. We know that it's never been sprayed with pesticides and that it's grown in healthy soil. So I would highly encourage you to try some oregano. But what we're doing to our front yard here, it's going to take less water and less work and be significantly more productive and in my opinion, beautiful, like significantly more beautiful. A peaceful place to be with so many different foods right at your fingertips. So now for the question of the day. What is your favorite edible to grow in your landscape? And whether that's on a pot in your porch or in your front yard, in your backyard, wherever you're growing edibles. Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.